I can remember one incident that came up 2 or 3 times, somewhat unrelated, and that was the CIA's ability to get things done in Afghanistan, and the Secretary is quite upset that the CIA was more effective in Afghanistan than we were in some cases, especially at the onset of hostilities or before hostilities. And of course it was understandable. The CIA had been there for 25 years and we hadn't set foot, the military hadn't set foot in Afghanistan for 25 years. But that was never a satisfactory answer to him. In fact, he ended up sort of building a capability that mirrored the CIA. I think it would have been unthinkable to say to the Secretary that, well, you know, the people who are really good at this are law enforcement. We should talk to the FBI, talk to DEA, talk to other law enforcement agencies that have been conducting interrogation for their entire careers. I don't think he would have accepted that answer.
I suspect that you're correct based on the discussions that we had with the Secretary's office when we were trying to do intelligence reform, which the Secretary was very resistant to and wanted instead to build up a duplicative capability within the Department of Defense. But how about the Army Field Manual, which had been the guidance for the Army, at least, in conducting interrogations? Was there discussion within the department of why that was inadequate in dealing with these detainees?
I was not privy to that.
Colonel, are you aware of any discussions about why the Army Field Manual's guidance on interrogation was not adequate?
No, Senator, I'm not.
Let me ask you another question based on the SEER training. Prior to 2002, are you aware of any time in which the interrogation techniques based on SEER training were ever employed successfully by military interrogators or by members of other U.S. government agencies?
Let me answer the question this way. What we call, what the committee is calling SEER techniques with regards to interrogation, they're not just SEER techniques. They're used by police, they're used by priests, they're used by your mom and dad. I mean, good cop, bad cop. We didn't invent that, but we use it in training. So a lot of these interrogation techniques are nothing more than interview techniques. And some of them, it's a friendly interviewer, and some of them, the interviewer is not so friendly. We've taken what we have found, as Dr. Ogrisseg said, and internalized those to our training because we know they work against us, and they have in the past. That's why we do lessons learned on every detention, prisoner of war, peacetime governmental situation that we come across, so we can train our folks more effectively. When you start looking at what other folks were doing, we don't really investigate how we do enemy prisoners of war or detention operations because it's just not applicable to our training.
But the SEER training was never intended to teach interrogation techniques, correct?
No, we don't teach interrogation techniques to our students.
It's resistance and survival, correct?
We teach our instructors interviewing techniques. We teach them how to use physical pressures so that we can teach students how to resist a determined adversary. And they learn those not to employ them as offensive capabilities, but to teach students how to employ the techniques we're trying to teach them and how to resist enemy captivity.
But the irony here is that the SEER training is intended to help our troops resist inappropriate interrogation methods, inhumane methods.
Yes, ma'am.
So by the very nature of the SEER training, we're trying to help our troops resist and survive interrogation techniques that are not sanctioned, that are inhumane or outside the pale. And that's why I think it's so troubling to many of us that those techniques were investigated for use by our interrogators, when in fact the whole purpose of SEER training is to teach our troops how to survive when they're being questioned by people who do not obey the international standards of humane treatment. Is that an accurate statement?
Yes, Senator, I believe it is.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator Collins. Senator Akaka, I believe, is next in line.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Mrs. Sifrin, I'm very interested in the circumstances surrounding your initial request to the Colonel. Prior to your July 2002 request, how familiar were you with the training conducted at the JPRA? More specifically, to what extent were you aware of the specifics of the resistance phase of SEER training, and that these techniques were designed to simulate the conditions employed by enemies who did not abide by the Geneva Convention?
Not familiar at all, Senator. I only knew of JPRA through another program. I had no detailed knowledge of SEER. I knew what SEER was, but no more than you could get from reading a paragraph on it.
Colonel, it is my understanding from your advance testimony that you were assigned to the USAF Survival School in a variety of capacities from 1990 until your retirement in 2003, and that in your last assignment as Chief of Staff, you had broad oversight and knowledge of internal processes. The question is, prior to the July request regarding interrogation resistance techniques used against U.S. prisoners of war, to your knowledge, had the JPRA ever been contacted by the DOD's Office of General Counsel regarding this type of information? In other words, to what extent did this seem to you to be an unusual request at that time?
Sir, there was contact between JPRA and the Office of General Counsel prior to July 2002. As I said in my opening statement, in interviews with the committee staffers, I came to realize that they'd actually requested the material that Mr. Schifrin said, the historical material, back in December of 01. So that was the first contact. The next contact was in early July, when they asked us for information on exploitation, interrogation, and I cleared that with the U.S. Joint Forces Command headquarters and my commander to provide the information.
Well, at that time, what was your understanding of the purpose of the request?
I don't want to speculate or put any thoughts in anybody's minds on that, but we used it for training. The only other purpose you could use it for is if you were to use it in a different environment. And we weren't part of that decision process. We were tasked by higher headquarters for information, and we provided the information.
Colonel, you assert the September 2002 Fort Bragg briefings were to assist the Army in training Army psychologists and other mental health personnel on what it meant to be assigned to duty at Guantanamo Bay, including instruction and exploitation, oversight, and treatment of detainees and staff in a captivity environment. To your knowledge, were aggressive interrogation techniques demonstrated at this briefing? Also, to what extent were you aware of the potential for the information of the JPRA briefing to be used as a model for the types of interrogation techniques recommended in the GTMO SEER interrogation SOP?